So welcome to Success Without Stress meets Sudbury Graduates. I'm very excited to be here with you. We have an amazing panel of graduates and are very lucky to also have Dr. Peter Gray to get us started with an introduction. I'm Daniel Merino and I'm going to be your host today. Let me introduce myself very quick. I'm the founder of UDESIA, a Sudbury-inspired school in Mexico, part of Sudbury International, and I am married, father of three, an entrepreneur, and passionate about education. I studied economics, worked at Procter & Gamble for 7 years in 4 countries, and then became an entrepreneur. And after that, for the last 12 years, I have focused my energy on education and how it must evolve. Thanks for being here today. I am pretty sure you will get impactful insights that will change the way you think. So let's begin with the agenda. First, I'm going to explain what Sudbury International is, the purpose of this webinar, and then we will go into the introduction by Dr. Peter Gray. And after this, we will jump into the roundtable with the amazing 5 graduates. And finally, we will go into your questions. The plan is that all of this will take 90 minutes. So what is Sudbury International? Sudbury International is a network of schools around the world inspired by the pioneering Sudbury Valley School. Each school is unique, but we are united by a shared mission to raise global awareness of this education model and the profound impact it can have on people's lives. And why are we doing this roundtable? We want more families to discover that this is a powerful and life-changing educational choice, a place where learning is joyful and children grow into independent, responsible, and capable adults. That kids do not need to suffer school and still have an amazing life. We want you to see the strong evidence so that you can feel more comfortable trusting your kids while reducing your fears. And what is this webinar about? We're going to be providing insights into how a Sudbury environment can help individuals live a fulfilling and meaningful life. We're going to be showcasing stories and experiences from Sudbury graduates from different schools. And very important, we're going to be exploring the tough questions that parents have about trusting their children. So here, we're not going to explain what a Sudbury school is or is not, or how it works, or the difference between schools. If after this webinar you want to know more, I invite you to do a few things. Read a book. We're going to be posting right now several options in the chat. Look for a school near you. You can find many schools around the world at sudburyinternational.org. Also, we're posting the link in the chat. And I encourage you to schedule a visit to one of these amazing schools. And before we begin, a few things to remember. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where are you from? If you have kids, why are you here? And also, very important, during the event, send your questions right there in the chat. Cassie Clausen from the Open School in California will be helping us manage the questions. She may jump in to introduce a follow-up questions while we are at the roundtable, or she may wait till the end to ask your questions. So the sooner you ask, the better chances of getting your questions answered. And with that, let's begin. It's an honor to introduce our opening speaker, Dr. Peter Gray. Peter is a research professor of psychology and neuroscience at Boston College and the author of Free to Learn, a landmark book that explores how children thrive when they are free to follow their own interest. He has published extensively in both academic journals and popular media on the role of play, curiosity, and self-direction in learning. His groundbreaking research on graduates of the Sudbury Valley School was among the first to show how young people educated through self-direction grow into capable, responsible, and fulfilled adults, often following non-traditional but deeply meaningful life paths. We are grateful to have him here today to open this conversation and help us reflect on the long-term impact of this model. Welcome, Peter, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. I hope everybody can hear me well. Let me know if you can't. Um, so, um, 45 years ago or more, I was very happily, not terribly excitedly, but happily mucking around with the brains of rats and mice in my laboratory, pursuing a career as a professor of neuroscience and psychology, but mostly neuroscience at Boston College. Uh, my son, meanwhile, had been rebelling in public school. Um, we tried mightily to get him to follow the rules of the school. He absolutely refused to do so. He made it very clear that to him that school was prison. And when we tried to find alternative schools, he said, "Well, this is a kind of a nicer prison, but it's still prison." And he absolutely wouldn't go there. And he was the kind of person who, um, if he said he wasn't going to do something, he wasn't going to do it. So what did we do? We found the Sudbury Valley School. We happened to live just a couple of miles away from it. At that time, in the late 1970s or beginning of the 1980s, 2 miles was pretty easy walking distance for a 10-year-old kid. And so he could walk to school or take his bike to this school. And so he started this school, and I was very happy that he was happy. He liked this school. He immediately said, "This is what a school ought to be." Um, and I was happy about that. But, like a lot of parents, uh, I had some concerns. I mean, this school was so different from anything that usually is called a school that I was happy that he was happy. I wasn't even worried about his learning. He happened to be a kid who learned very naturally anyway, no matter what. But I was a little worried about his future. Like, what can you do as a graduate if you haven't gotten a typical kind of high school degree? If suppose he wanted to go on to some career that required college, could he go to college from such a school? A school that doesn't really even have courses, that doesn't have grades, that doesn't give you tests, that doesn't evaluate you, rank you in comparison to the other kids in the class on academic measures. It runs counter to the usual, to basically all of our conceptions of what a school is. So I began to ask staff members and parents. I went to meetings with parents. I began to ask them, "So how are the graduates doing?" And I began to ask about the graduates, and so I'd hear these little stories about some of the graduates, and it was a little bit comforting. But being a scientist, I kind of wanted something more systematic, to largely to calm my concerns as a parent. So I ended up, along with the collaboration of a part-time staff member at the school, David Chenoff, doing a study of the graduates. We actually did this study in 1983. Believe it or not, that long ago. The school had already been in existence long enough that by that time there were some kids who had never been to another school and had graduated from that school. Most of them had been to a public school before they went to this school, but we defined graduates of the school for the purpose of the study as people who had been at the school for at least what would have been their last 2 years of high school, if they had been at a school that calls itself a high school, and had been out for at least 2 years. By that definition, there were at that time, I've written it down, 82 graduates of the school. We were amazingly able to locate 76 of them, and of that 76, 69 completed a very extensive questionnaire that we sent to them, either written or for people who lived closer, we interviewed them and took notes on the questionnaire about what they had done at the school, what they liked, didn't like about the school. and what they were doing now after they left the school. A lot of questions. It was amazing that so many of them filled it out. 69 children. That was a response rate of 91%. I mean, nobody gets a response rate of 91%. I don't know what it was, but maybe because many of these students were pioneers, they were really kind of eager to talk about the school and their experience. So that study, number one, calmed my worries as a parent. The graduates were doing very well. They seemed to be doing very well, no matter what their background had been, no matter why they originally came to the school. Some kids came to the school because of they had trouble one way or another in the public school. Some came just because the parents believed in it. Some came because they were siblings of the troubled kid. And I guess when you send one kid to this kind of a school, it's a little hard to send your other kids to a different kind of school. So they came for various reasons. We also interviewed the parents, surveyed the parents to get some knowledge about why these people originally came. So I'm not gonna tell you all the findings of the study. You can find the study if you want on my website, petergray.org, and as well as many other things I've written. But the school not only calmed my concerns as a parent, but it absolutely triggered my curiosity as an academician. Wow, here are young people who have not done what we usually think of as school. And they're out doing well in the world. By any reasonable definition, they're well educated. I define, by the way, I define education as everything that a person learns that enables that person to live a satisfying and meaningful and moral life. Isn't that what we want from education? Isn't that what every parent wants for their kids? Every well-meaning parent? Isn't that what every state, every government should want for their citizens? People who are living a satisfying, meaningful, and moral life? By that definition, there was no question in my mind these graduates were well educated. And it changed the direction of my career. I gradually stopped mucking around with the brains of rats and mice and began to do more and more research and writing and thinking about education, about what is it. So I'm biologically oriented. I'm an evolutionary psychologist. I look at human nature from the viewpoint of natural selection. We come into the world not as blank slates to be written upon by experience, but we come into the world as fully formed individuals who have a personality, who have basic drives and instincts that lead us to behave in certain ways that lead us to ultimately be successful in the world. So much comes from inside of us. It's not that everything is implanted upon us. And so from that perspective, I became really interested. What is it that kids come into the world with that leads them to educate themselves when they're in a setting like Sudbury Valley, like the Sudbury Valley School was? And I've kind of devoted the last 42 years or so to exploring that and writing about that. So it was that, I attribute it all to my son, who forced me to look at this kind of thing by rebelling in public school. And then ultimately my looking at this school and my beginning to think about it and beginning to, after realizing they become educated, then the question became, well, how do they become educated? Well, that's not the topic of this meeting, so I'm not gonna belabor it. I also want to note, I'm delighted to see that Jeff Hyman is one of the people that we're going to be hearing from. Now, Jeff was one of the participants in that initial study of the graduates. I looked up how when he graduated, and I think he must have just barely made the cut. He graduated in 1981. We did a study in 1983. And the way we defined the participants is they had to have been out for at least 2 years, so that they had at least a little bit of experience out in the world before, so that they could talk about their experience out in the world after leaving Sudbury Valley. So I'm delighted to be here. In some sense, this is full circle. I started off more than 40 years ago doing a study of graduates, and here now I am able to listen to graduates, including one who was in that initial study. So thank you for inviting me to be here.
Thanks. So it's now time to dive into the roundtable. And let me introduce the 5 amazing graduates that we have with us today. As you will see, all of them have very interesting but different stories. And if you listen carefully, many of your fears may begin to fade because it will change your paradigms about how schools should work, our role as adults in education, and the unexpected but incredible things that can happen in each person's life history. So starting with Jeff Hyman, that Peter already talked about, let me tell a little bit of him. Jeff graduated from the Sudbury Valley School in 1981, where he attended from the age of 8. After spending over a decade exploring, playing, and learning on his own terms, Jeff went on to build a career in biotech, earned a degree in business management, and became an environmental health and safety professional, now with over 35 years of experience supporting large multinational companies. But Jeff's story goes far beyond his profession. He has traveled extensively around the world, played drums in a band, worked on film production, and even holds a US patent. He's also a certified mindful outdoor guide, blending science and mindfulness in his approach to work and life. He credits his Sudbury education with teaching him how to learn, solve problems, and lead positive change. So thanks for being here, Jeff. And now let me introduce Julia. Julia James graduated from the Circle School in 1998 after attending from age 3. During her teenage years, she chose to spend 2 years in public high school, partly to prove to herself that she could succeed in a traditional academic environment. Confident in what she had gained, she returned to the Circle School to complete her final year and graduate. She later served as a full-time staff member at the school for 7 years and continues to support its mission as secretary of the Board of Trustees. Julia earned a BA in English writing and has explored a wide range of careers, including leading call center analytics at Netflix. And this was before finding her niche as an entrepreneur. Today, she co-owns a grocery store with her husband, where she manages marketing, accounting, customer relations, and daily operations. Her story is a testament to the versatility, self-confidence, and lifelong adaptability that a Sudbury education can foster. Thank you for being here, Julia. Now, let me introduce Calvin Youngras. Calvin began his educational journey at Sudbury Valley at age 4, where he spent his formative years climbing trees, making music, and exploring freely. At age 12, he transitioned to the Macomber Center, where he continued his self-directed education and eventually graduated in 2017. Driven by a passion for math and physics, Calvin earned a Bachelor of Science in Space Engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI, one of the top universities in the world for aerospace and space engineering. Today, he is a propulsion systems engineer contributing to cutting-edge space technology, including the development and testing of microwave electrothermal thrusters. With expertise in R&D, CAD modeling, structural analysis, and production processes, he plays a key role in major aerospace projects. His journey highlights how freedom and curiosity can lead to technical excellence, innovation, and a meaningful career in one of the most complex fields in the world. Thank you, Calvin, for being here. And now let me introduce Elia Ohayon. Elia graduated from Kanaf Sudbury School in Israel in 2019, where she embraced her freedom at school from the age of 9, commuting 2 hours a day to attend the schools she loved. Since graduating, she has built a life grounded in service, resilience, and independence. She began working at age 15, spent a year volunteering at a boarding school for at-risk youth, and then, as required by law, served 2 years in the military, where she supported soldiers with mental health challenges. She later lived and worked independently in the UK, returned home during the war to volunteer in hospitals, and is now preparing to study medicine. To pursue that goal, Elia had taught herself the entire high school curriculum and passed 10 national exams in just 3 months. Her journey is a powerful example of how Sudbury education fosters adaptability, inner strength, and the drive to thrive in any environment. Thank you for being here, Elia. And the final grad that we have is Connor Tarrell. Connor spent 11 years at the Circle School, beginning at age 6. After graduating in 2004, he earned a business administration degree from Babson College, ranked as the #1 university in the world for entrepreneurship. He graduated magna cum laude, was recognized as the top IT management student of his year, and played 4 years of varsity soccer. Connor has built a successful career in systems integration, consulting, and software engineering. He spent 7 years at Accenture, where he worked as a project manager before joining Slalom Consulting, where he now serves as the director in the software engineering practice. A lifelong self-directed learner, Connor taught himself to code, an ability he credits to his software education, and used it to pivot his career from management to hands-on engineering. An entrepreneur at heart, he launched a 25K t-shirt business while still in high school. He has also run 3 marathons, including one to Athens, to mark his 10-year cancer anniversary. His journey highlights how Sudbury education can foster adaptability, initiative, and perseverance in both career and life. And with this, we're ready to begin. Thanks everyone for being here. And let's start with a simple but meaningful question. Why are you here today? You could be doing anything on a Saturday, but you decide to be here. Why? Julia, could you start with this question, please?
Sure. I am here because I really believe in self-directed democratic education as a powerful force for change in the world. And I think its reach goes beyond the kids who get to experience it and has a really positive effect on society as a whole.
Thank you. Jeff, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah, I'm here in the East Coast, the United States in Massachusetts. I could be attending different things that are going around the city today, but it is just a delight to be here in having the opportunity to speak with people about our experience, and sharing that information and maybe helping guide a little bit with our experience will answer some questions and some fears that people have, but you'll find out I'm a pretty normal person, but wow, I'm among giants. Everybody has done some amazing things. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation and sharing.
Thank you. Elia, you want to add anything?
Yes, I think the main thing is that I know how meaningful Sudbury education was for me, so I would like to maybe have a bit of inspiration for other children to be here, like for their parents to trust the process.
Awesome. That's great. Connor?
The group has said it well. I'm here and spend my time on the Circle School and this world because I think it's an underserved education model in our world, and anything I can do to help it exist and thrive in more places, I want to do.
Awesome. And Calvin, why are you here?
I like talking about it, different schooling models. I think it's an interesting question. And mainly I just really loved my time at Sudbury Valley and the Maycomber Center. So for a lot of reasons, I think it's good. I want to share the good word.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I would like to start with if you could walk us through your professional journey from the first job or business to what you're doing now. Like, how did your career unfold? And Connor, can you start with that one?
Sure. When I went to undergrad right out of the Circle School. When I was getting ready to graduate, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, so I decided to become a consultant so I could see different industries and figure out where that would lead me. And it has been 17 years, and I am still a consultant. It turns out I really like solving problems. But I don't know, I worked at Accenture, which is a giant consulting firm, for a number of years, and getting to work on small teams and solve problems and use my ability to learn new things well has helped. And then moved to a smaller firm when I was ready to stop traveling. And I think you said this in my intro, I've always been a hobby software engineer, always building apps and websites and things like that. And I realized at some point that I was getting way more energy from the work I was doing when I went home at the end of the day than I was from the energy I did than the work I did all day. So I switched and said, this is what I'm going to do full time now. And my company was thankfully supportive of that. But it's something my boss talks about regularly is he's like, your ability to learn things and teach yourself things and your drive to actually do it is the reason you're here and successful and years ahead of where others would be in doing this same switch. And I'm still there 17 years later.
Wow, that's great. Jeff, you want to go?
Sure. I attended the Sudbury Valley School. I graduated in 1981, as Peter mentioned. It seems like a long time ago, but it feels like yesterday. When I left, I actually was, I had two things. I wanted to work. I needed to work to support my mom and my sister. And I went into a food servicing industry for about a couple of years, but always just felt I knew that I was going to want to branch into other things. And I developed a relationship with a company where I was repairing machines, vending machines for them. And I built up a rapport with the HR manager. So I did not go to college right away, but I got a part-time job at a genetics firm back in 1983. So for 1983, that was sort of the start of biotech, and getting it at the very bottom and sort of learning. I would go there and fix machines, and I would see some really cool stuff going on. People are working with liquid nitrogen. There's incubators. There's research labs. I'm like, I think this is where I need to go. This is where I need to work. And so I started in a part-time support operation kind of department, and worked my way through that. And really just quit the other job, went full time, and just worked hard, learned, added value, worked my way through to becoming an environment and just learning on the job, but also learning, at night, in college at night. So I basically unconventionally went to college at night, and I didn't actually receive a degree until I was 40. So that's interesting. I ended up in environment, health and safety and sustainability, and worked my way up to being a senior director of a very large firm, Merck in Germany. And I retired in 2022 from the big commute and the grind at work in that wonderful job. And then I began consulting in the sustainability industry. So as mentioned, I'm now a mindful outdoor guide, but I also work with clients to help them rewild their operations in terms of their landscape and their wellness inside. And it's been a great ride. And the school, just my own intrinsic motivation just came from my own self-directed learning. So it's played its way through, and it's been great.
That's awesome. Yeah, quite the story. Thank you. And Julia, do you want to share anything?
Sure. I did like just casual work right out of high school. I took a year off before going to college, and then spent a year at Hampshire College in Massachusetts. Didn't love it. Wasn't ready for that. And came back to Pennsylvania, got a job working in a Earthlink call center in ISP, and then with them moved out to California and worked for Earthlink there, and then wound up working in the Netflix call center back when Netflix was still a very small company. I think they had about 1 million subscribers in those days and were just sending DVDs in the mail. After I'd been there for a few months, my boss came to me and said, the guy who does our reporting for the call center just quit, and I think you could do that job. And I was like, I don't know anything about that. And he said, well, you just have to be good at Excel. And I was like, well, I don't really know anything about Excel. And he was like, well, you'll learn. So I did. And that was a lot of fun, and introduced me to ways of looking at information and data that I wasn't aware of. And I did become an Excel master. After a year or so, I came back to Pennsylvania and worked for Earthlink again, this time in their call center analytics. And then they actually ended up closing the call center here in Pennsylvania. And so I went back to school, did a couple of years of community college, and then transferred to McDaniel College in Maryland, where I got a bachelor's degree in English. After that, I went to the Circle School, back to the Circle School, and was on staff full-time, primarily in administrative roles. I was the assistant business manager and then the business manager there until 2014. I sort of started transitioning out. And in 2015, my husband and I had the opportunity to buy a very small business. I actually thought it was going to be more like a time-consuming hobby than a business. We did that. It was a little market stand selling local food at a local public market. And so that's been 10 years this month. And we have grown enormously. I now have about 15 employees. And it's very much a full-time job. And I still do some work for the Circle School on the side, in addition to serving on the board of trustees.
Thank you. Awesome. So we're going to go into the next question. What was it like to go to school with total freedom? I mean, for most of us, it's like imagining something that is so far away from us. No grades, no tests, no homework, no curriculum. So how did you spend your time? How did it feel to go to school each day? So Elia, can you share how was that experience for you?
Sure, I will try to capture it, maybe to let people imagine it for themselves. I think when you say total freedom, then most people imagine chaos and a lot of mess, and there's no order. So I can talk to for myself, but also my friends. We felt that our school had a lot of order and had rules and had like a very clear boundaries system. We came into our little world that we knew exactly how it works and what's allowed and what's not allowed, and we felt very safe. I felt very safe. I'll talk for myself. And I felt that I have my own world, that no one can really interfere, and I can create my life, really, and I am trusted to know what's right for me. And that was a very strong feeling I had for all of my years in Sudbury School. So I loved my school, and my friends, we hated having holidays, and we wanted to come back every time, and every weekend was like very hard to say bye. And when I graduated, it was like a very, very difficult stage, but just feeling at home, really, that's the main thing I can say.
And how did you spend your days? Like, what did you do?
So I was very involved in all of the committees and like the base committees of school, like all of the like judging systems, like the parliament and all of the rules and creating rules and being very involved. I was very involved in like being a part of organizing trips and events for school. I was very liked to be very busy. Had a very strong friend system, was very involved in that. Also after schools, had a lot of time playing and running around, playing basketball and just basically running around places. I think I was very involved with the younger kids. I was very in a position of like maybe a big sister, or very caring about them since I was very young in school. It always felt like we're kind of responsible for each other, and that was kind of my feeling. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Calvin, can you share with us how it was for you?
I think similar experience to Aaliyah from what it sounds like. Just yeah, a really great time. Spent a lot of time just making friends, talking to my friends, hanging out, playing sports, ultimate frisbee outside, board games inside. Yeah, it was just it's nice having the freedom, I guess, to choose how you spend your day. So you're always sort of doing things that you want to be doing. And if you decide you're more interested in learning something or something like that, that's a conscious decision. So as I got older, maybe I started doing more like class type things, not necessarily your standard classes, but whatever we were interested in, we'd try to learn about. Yeah, it was just a good time. I feel like it kind of reflects on life after school too, where you don't necessarily always have someone else setting your schedule. You're making your own schedule in school. So that's something I liked from the beginning, I guess.
Nice. Jeff, I mean, just to switch to like all the way back to those years, was that experience similar to you, or did you enjoy going to school?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I mean, my first day, I was 8 years old, and I was dropped off at the parking lot. You know, you walk down the hill, you go to school. You know, by contrast, you know, I just want to say I did go to a public school till like first or through a little bit of second grade, and kind of like Peter's son Scott didn't like it, but I made a decision. Like I got to the crossing, there was a crosswalk, and there was usually a crossing guard to get there. And, you know, I looked both ways. I crossed the road, and then I was in trouble. It was like, how did you cross the road? I'm like, I've looked, I made a decision. And so my first sort of feeling about self-directedness, you know, was my own experiences. And so, you know, you're 8 years old. I arrived at a big campus, 10-acre campus, a big building. I spent a lot of time in the art room. There was a table in the art room where there were about 7 or 8 kids that would work with plasticine. And it wasn't just simple modeling stuff. It was like an entire city that was being built. And I just, you know, plopped myself down. But I would say that I would find myself doing that and being outside instead of, you know, being outside for some arbitrary amount of time. It was like, well, if it's nice out, you're outside. And I think my evolution was, you know, getting to know people and sort of exploring things and sort of getting to know people. It's like, okay, this is cool. And oh, what are these people? What are these students up to? You know, it's like, oh, and wait, they're not all my age. There's older kids, you know, we call them big kids. There's little kids, you know, I started off as a little kid, then I became a big kid to little kids. And it's like, you're in this amalgam of people, and you're just learning to be social, and you're hearing and just getting feedback. So, and I would say that, you know, I always was interested in, you know, understanding things about math or spelling or writing. And there was an opportunity to just talk to staff and say, hey, can you teach me how to do this? And yeah. And, you know, I was there, you know, 8:30 in the morning till 5 at night. We were often driven back and forth by people, you know, staff members or people that were driving by our house. I would go home with my sister, and we'd walk by kids at 4:30 or 5 o'clock at night. They're like, what are you guys doing? What school do you go to? I'm like, why do you go to school all day? Like, isn't that terrible? It's like, don't get it. Don't have time to explain it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's the general experience in these schools. I mean, kids love it so much. So we're gonna get into the tough questions that parents have, like what motivated you to go to college? And how did you manage to get accepted and even graduate? Because I mean, if you didn't have like the traditional credentials, no experience with exams, structure, deadlines, like even classes, how did you do it? So Calvin, can you help us like getting in a super tough university? How was that for you?
Yeah, for sure. So to start, I guess what motivated me, I went to Sudbury style schools all my life. Like I said, loved it. But around when I was 17, I was sort of interested in trying something new, feeling ready to move on, really curious what like a regular college would be like. So I definitely wanted to go and try it. I decided to try for engineering because I liked math and building things and stuff like that. So I thought it might be a good fit. So definitely applied to a lot of different schools because I wasn't sure how they would all react to my unconventional background. I definitely I put together like a quote unquote transcript with different activities that I would do at my schooling, even if it wasn't a regular class, if it was something that could be related, like learning how to make maple syrup or playing music or all types of activities or more math, pre-calculus I did with my friends, whatever, that would go on there too. So put that together, and yeah, there were staff members that could help study for the SATs. In America, you pretty much need to take the SATs to go to most four-year colleges. But since it was something I wanted to do, I was definitely motivated studying for that, even if it was weird that it was like a standardized test. And there were members at the school, staff members at the school that could help me study for that. So yeah, all that put together, applied, wrote some essays. I had done some writing in school, like creative writing. I think that helped too. And yeah, worked out for me, I guess.
And was it difficult for you, like being in college and going through the tests and all the new structure?
It was definitely different. I wouldn't say it was particularly difficult for me personally. It was like it took time adjusting, of course, but I was really just interested in trying something new and enjoyed it. Maybe there were like a couple classes, sometimes it was like, oh, there's prior knowledge that I didn't have, but generally speaking, almost every class in college sort of held its own, and anything I needed to learn for the class was there in the introduction, and like I could go to the professor to help me with anything like that. So I had a pretty good experience with that. Yeah.
Very interesting. Connor,
Daniel,
yeah,
sorry,
sure.
we have a couple of questions about college, so I just wanted to pop in here, and maybe we can add this to the college conversation. Denisa would like to know what the biggest challenge for you guys were. So those of you who went to college, which I think all of you did, what was the biggest challenge in a conventional education space in college for you? And then also any differences you noticed between yourself and other students who went to conventional school. That comes from Rebecca. And did any of your professors notice that difference? So I know we've got a lot of questions here about college, but maybe you can address any of those that speak to you.
Yeah, I think that's great. We can add that. And I was gonna go with you, Connor. So if you can add that to your response, because it's very interesting. Also, like you went to the #1 university in entrepreneurship. So I suppose that wasn't easy.
Yeah. I always knew college was in my future. It was a combination of knowing I kind of wanted to be in the more business world, which expects it. And I also wasn't feeling ready to be done playing soccer. I wanted to play for 4 more years, which I did through school. Choosing schools was I went to the school I did because I didn't want to wait till grad school to focus on the world of business. I didn't want to just do 4 years of a liberal arts degree if I knew I was going to follow it right up with a business focused thing. like Calvin, everywhere I went to school, I talked to the admissions directors and said, what do I need to do for you to evaluate me? Wrote extra essays. I interviewed everywhere that I went, even if they don't do interviews, wrote up things that I did at the school to try to tell a story of who I am and the types of things that I did at school. Going to the question Cassie got to, I think the thing that was the biggest transition for me when I got to college was I had never read a book that I didn't want to read and want to read well. So I had never skimmed a book. Soccer is a fall sport. So I'm in 5 classes, I'm playing a varsity sport, and there's way too much homework. I had to really quickly learn how to skim books and figure out which things you need to fully pay attention to or not. I think it was also quickly apparent how many people went to public school and could get good grades by memorizing facts and definitions before big exams and things like that versus truly understanding the content. Go to class and take notes instead of playing on your computer. And so I remember before a giant exam that was known for kicking people's butt, everybody freaking out and rattling off definitions of things. And I'm going, I can't do any of this, but I actually understand how this content works, which I'm pretty sure is what matters. Like I understand how to apply principles of the things we're learning and not having memorized things that I think don't matter. And of course, that is exactly what you needed to be able to do. So I transitioned in really well because I was trying to understand how things really work and not just memorize things to get a grade.
Awesome. So going into the next one. So without a fixed curriculum, without adults guiding you and creating activities for you, did you ever feel like you missed out on important knowledge, either for college or for life in general? So have you ever felt disadvantaged or limited because your parents chose to send you to a Sudbury inspired school? Jeff, you want to start?
Okay. You know, the vibrancy of the school for me was there was staff members, there were about 100 students at the time. And so you sort of have this cauldron of activity. And though nothing was required, there were people that were talking about teaching world history. And for anybody that knows Danny Greenberg, who was one of the founders of the Sudbury Valley School, you know, he actually had a class called World History, and it was attended by a lot of people. Or one of the things that I learned early on was that I always knew I was going to have to create to write a thesis and defend it in front of an assembly and sort of explain why I'm ready to go out into the world. And so sort of having that in my mind was I want to learn about things. I want to learn some of the rudimentary things. So I would seek that out, and it did seem a little bit more traditional. Again, so I did learn spelling. I did learn math. I think we learned math from you know, fractions through algebra, you know, in a year, and you know, things you did on your own or things you did or got help from staff members. You know, we're all people, whether we go to a Sudbury school or a public school, somebody's going to have some limitation, you know, in their life. They're going to wish they had done something differently. I don't feel that way. You know, I'm not like Calvin. Calvin's into the astrophysics crazy. I love it. And maybe I wasn't going to head that way, but but for the things that I wanted to do, my interest took me there, and I went in that direction. And I think as Connor said I never thought I would have to write so many papers in college. And so, you know, I never learned how to type. Okay. I'm like, think, 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 think. And I mean, I'm like that guy. And there wasn't a computer at school at the time. And I'm a pretty good typer now. I can write in a paper very quickly. But if I had been able to know how to type, I think I could have done things a little less painfully. But, you know, again, did very well. Also graduated high, magna cum laude, whatever. I mean, I did it to just do it at that point. But I didn't feel limited. I actually felt empowered. I always felt empowered.
How was for you, Elia? Have you felt any disadvantage or limited?
Yeah, I've been thinking about the answer when you were talking, and I can really connect to what Jeff is saying. I think sometimes when you want to justify a choice, then you're looking for like this ideal person that comes out of Sudbury School, and we're all people, and we all have disadvantages and stuff that are easier for us and stuff that are harder. I think that's very human and very important to remember also for parents about their kids. Like I can remember then, like my parents were fully supported on my journey and really didn't, maybe not, don't know if to say not care, but didn't put like the light on the achievements or the end goals. Like it's the way that people live their life, I think, have more significant like weight on it. And I can say that I feel a lot of, maybe I need to work much harder now to learn math and to learn physics because I need it for my test, because I've never done it before. And I feel like it's not because of someone else that I've never done it before. I never done it before because I didn't have a good like I didn't have any purpose for it. And when I was in school, I said like I will learn all of these things if I'll find a good reason for it. And now I sit for hours and hours and I study whatever I need to study, and I'm doing very well because I want to do it and I can see the purpose for it. So I'm doing like we don't put the responsibility on others, and I don't blame anyone. It's like was my choice and it's my life, and now I live it much more, I think, fully and in peace in what it is, because I chose it and it was important for me.
We have a couple of people who have the same question. But did you ever feel envious of people in public school? Did you see how they, projected it on movies and TV? Do you wish that were you wanting, or did you wish that you were in public school when you were students?
Well, I think Julia, you're the one because you went to public school.
I sure did want to go to public school. I started at the Circle School when I was 3 years old. It is probably important to note for this conversation that my parents were founders of the Circle School. And I spent quite a bit of my elementary and middle school years saying, can I go to public school? And I think I wanted to know how I measured up. And so I did go to 3 years of public high school and then returned to the Circle School for my senior year. For me, I think the biggest thing probably was, I think that one of the really important things that democratic education offers to kids is like a safe space to experiment with who they want to be without a lot of judgment. So I did go to public school. I did very well academically. The other piece was that the Circle School when I was there was like 20 kids. And so it wasn't necessarily the most socially stimulating environment. And I was interested in learning what it was like to be part of a bigger community. So I finally did that and got the answers to my questions.
Great. The rest of you, I mean, did anybody else felt like compelling to wanted to go to a public school?
I considered it briefly when I was 14 because I was very actively playing soccer, and that was the age where high school soccer really takes off. Instead, I started playing in adult leagues when I was 14 for those 3 months a year that high school soccer is happening. That was the only drive for me. I played soccer seriously enough for a long time that I had a network of people in different public schools in the area through soccer that none of them made me, interacting with them on a regular basis never made me feel like I was falling behind my peers. And so there was never the educational side of it for me. It was just sports and the social a bit. The Circle School is not very big compared to public schools, but it was the right size for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go into the next one. a common concern from parents is, if kids can do whatever they want all day, how will they develop discipline, responsibility, or the ability to function in the real world? So what's your perspective on this? How did you develop these traits? Elia, do you want to go?
Sure. I think it connects pretty straight with what I said before about how you imagine like total freedom than to how it actually is in Sudbury School. Like I can talk only for my school, but I have a feeling like it's mutual. It's a very strict form of school. Like the rules are very clear, so you don't come in and feel lost. I think that's the first thing. And also when like I don't know, I feel when I look from the side and also on myself, but children are responsible kind of beings. I mean, they care about having fun. They care about being like eating. They care about having friends. They care about being loved. And I think all of those guidelines are just how you come into this world kind of wanting to be safe and being a part of something and being successful. So it just kind of, I think this is the perfect question that can't be really answered, because when people ask me like, so how, like, what do you do all day? So you can't really put any words to it, to just being like, I just was living my life since I was 9 and I had a really good time and sometimes had hard times, but just was very actively living. So I think that's just what made it work, that you want to be successful in life also when you're very young, because you want to have a good life, and then you do what's needed to make that happen, if it's having friends or being part of things that feel more meaningful, just like how it goes. And I think any kid that doesn't like, you don't interfere too much in how they grow and how they see life, then that's just kind of what happens. And I can talk about myself, but also I saw about kids around me, younger kids, like those that didn't have any, like a lot of interference, or the parents were very like there for them, but didn't really interfere or ask too much, like, what did you do today, with an expectation of hearing something that counts, then they are very successful also in their childhood and also after.
Yeah, Calvin.
I have a related question. Maybe Calvin, you can speak on this a little bit too, from Sam, is what role did boredom play for you in your learning and creativity?
These are both great questions. Yeah, definitely, depending on the school, there's different types of rules. SVS had a long written rule book. The Maycomber Center had like not written rules that same way, but was still very clear on certain things. Obviously, there's no violence or anything in school, so you kind of learn that one way or another. And just in terms of responsibility, I think the first question, by the way, in terms of responsibility, I think choosing how to spend your time and having not necessarily a set schedule can be difficult, and definitely can feel like, yeah, that's just sometimes difficult, how to choose to spend your time. But going to a free school, you sort of learn how to handle that earlier on, versus that's something everyone's going to have to learn eventually. You're going to be in some situation where you have to make your own schedule. But just learning it in school early on, I think, was a great environment for that. And in terms of boredom too, for sure, you have a lot of free time and you get bored sometimes, and that's what encourages you to learn new things and try new things. Definitely, like me and my friends would play the same games over and over again, and they were fun and it was great, but eventually we would get bored and decide to try something new, and that might lead us to learning that we're even more interested in something else. So I think that's a really important aspect of the school model.
And Calvin, that's even true for video games, right? Because I mean, like right now in this era, like a lot of parents are so fearful of freedom with video games, but you had the freedom to play video games all day long in both schools, I think. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I liked video games growing up. I still like them, play them sometimes. There were days in the winter when I was younger, me and my friends would stay inside. It was cold out, nasty, and we'd just stay inside all day playing video games. and it was great. But yeah, as I got older, I was like maybe more interested in doing more other things and getting bored of that and just sort of growing out of it, and still played them sometimes, but it didn't really stick with us. And I saw that for a lot of people. They usually tend to try something new after a while.
Yeah, and with that, I think you answered the question that I have next, but maybe for the rest, and that I can jump into that one. But if you were free to play all day, why did you eventually choose to work hard, study, and pursue a professional path? This comes often from parents, because it's like, if kids are never forced, will they ever choose to challenge themselves? I mean, this is something that really parents think about. So, and I know for you, like, it doesn't make sense, but it is a common question. So, Connor, can you help us?
I feel a little bit offended that you think my playing was not challenging myself and hard work. I think we worked really hard at a lot of the really fun things that we did, whether that was, board games and role-playing games and things like that, or games outside and learning to do flip throws with a soccer ball, and like all those things are fun, and I was having a blast. But it's a lot of hard work, and you learn a lot of how to push yourself, how to learn new things, how to work together as a group, physical and mental tasks. Like a lot of that fits together. You're just doing it around fun instead of around, I don't know, whatever you do in the academic world, writing a paper.
Awesome. Thank you, Connor. Jeff?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Connor said, as well as Calvin, because there's just, if you are a person that is thriving in a Sudbury school, I mean, you have this intrinsic, something sort of happens without, and Elliot tried to, you can't explain it, but you just, first of all, there's all these people in this dynamic, passionate atmosphere, from staff to students, and it's sort of like your big canvas of what's going on here, and that interest changes all the time. When I think about my own education at Sudbury Valley School, it was it morphed from one thing to another. It was like this group of kids is doing this. Maybe they were playing Risk, which I guess you're learning about, world conflicts and events, or these students are doing something. They're taking apart a piece of machinery, at the barn. It's sort of like this, whoa, there's so much going on. And then, so you're sort of, you're motivated by your peers. And it shouldn't be, it should be mentioned that, and maybe my colleagues here echo the same thing, but I learned a lot from other students. I learned a ton, and so that was interesting. And you're just like, whoa, this is cool. Whether somebody was building something or dissecting something or, exploring.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Cassie?
So on this topic with the free to play, and I know you touched quickly on video games, Calvin, but obviously use of technology is a big area of anxiety for parents, and we do have some questions about that. So maybe you can talk about, and Calvin and Aaliyah, since you guys are our youngest, so maybe you have the most similar experience to those who are growing up in Sudbury schools now. Talk about a little about your access to technology, or if you had unlimited screen time, and then how you feel like that impacted you, your childhood or adulthood, and maybe even if you can talk about the experiences of your co-students, if anyone had different experiences to you. Calvin, you had mentioned, that it got boring at some point. You started doing other things. Was that did you see that with everyone around you? Anyway, and then any thoughts on technology usage now as it continues to develop and personal devices are everywhere and parents are trying to navigate this? Big question. We could have a whole webinar on it. So yeah. 3 minutes, go.
So, yep, Calvin.
Me first, I guess. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely a really interesting question, whether you see it as a problem or whatever. If you see it as a problem, it's a tough problem to tackle. There were certainly times I played a lot of video games and times when I didn't want to play video games, but a lot of other people were on their iPads and I wasn't didn't love that. It sort of, in my mind, it sort of breaks the model if you like control how much time other people play video games. And there was never that control set on me. And I liked that because, you know, when I felt ready to move on, it was my own choice. No one was ever forcing me not to do it. I don't know these past few years if there's even more prominence, but typically most people I saw wouldn't play video games all day for every day throughout their whole schooling career. My experience.
Thank you, Calvin. Elia?
I think it's very different now, even though I graduated 6 years ago, but I think it's different. So I can talk about that time because now it's even more available. Me and my friend didn't spend a lot of time on phones and stuff. It was usually thrown in the bag in the beginning of the day and didn't touch it for the rest of the day. But I can say about my friends that I have some friends that had like periods of very like all day on the computer. We had this house that had like computer games and stuff, but you need to register and you couldn't like be on it all day, and you had to work it out according to the rules, like how much time you can do and the turns you take and stuff. So that was also monitored, I think, in the school with the rules that everyone can have time on the computers. But I can say that they say usually like we needed that time to be like so invested and like so a bit disconnected from the world to be able to come out and to see what we missed. Like it was a very, like they talk about it as an important part of their realization and their process. So I think it's very individual of like why kids maybe play all day on their phones. Like some will and some won't. So I think it's just a part of like their journey.
Thank you. Yeah. So another classic worry. Will children actually learn to read, write, and do math? So what can you say about this? Because I mean, we're saying there are no forced classes. I mean, like, why would anybody learn, or how would they learn to read? So can you share your experience? And I would like to start with you, Calvin, if you can, please.
Sure. Yeah. I think maybe Jeff said this. Someone said this earlier, but the things you really need to learn, you will end up learning one way or another. That's what I truly believe. Reading and writing, at some point, you'll definitely learn it. This actually relates to the video game topic for me. I probably didn't really learn to be a super competent reader until I was maybe 8 or 9. And when I finally did, it was from playing video games. There was a video game I really liked that had a really interesting story. And I used to ask my sister to read the text for me, but eventually she said, I'm done with this, do it yourself. And that's when I learned to read, is because I needed to follow the story. So yeah.
And did you see any of your peers not learning to read?
Not eventually. Yeah, by the time they were 11 or I don't know what age, but at some point everyone knew how to read. Yeah.
Julia, you were like a lot of, I mean, since you were 3 and then you were a full staff member, what is your experience with how kids learn these skills in these schools?
I think every kid is different, and so there's not one way that I have seen people learn to read, but I think it's really similar to the way kids learn to walk and talk. It's a skill that they know they need in order to interact with the world around them. And for some kids, that is like an emergency and they want to do it as soon as possible. And some kids, it's less pressing, less urgent, and they might wait a little bit longer. But I think the oldest I've ever seen kids go without being fluent readers is probably around 10 or so. But by that point, I think, it is a really important way that people interact with the world. And going back, I think this would have been my answer to one of the previous questions too, but I think like people want to interact with the world. They want to be productive, useful members of their communities and societies, and that's a big driving force And that is, it informs that hard work play, figuring out social dynamics. It informs the drive to learn to read. It informs the drive to develop, self-management and time management skills. And I think it can happen differently for many kids. I see that in the chat just popped up. How did you learn to read and write? And for me, I think I mostly learned to read through osmosis, through people reading to me and following along on the page. And I don't think that I went through really any formal reading learning. I'm sure I went through some kind of formal writing learning, like learning to write cursive, because I do write in cursive, but I don't really remember doing that. So it wasn't like a big deal, and it wasn't a struggle.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is like so different from, well, like most of the population thinks about how to learn to read, and like the fear that happens when, oh, I mean, my kids are not gonna learn to read, or they have to learn to read at a certain age. So this is very helpful. Thank you. So what would you say to a parent who's unsure about choosing or even like staying in a Sudbury school, because they might be afraid their child, as we're saying, won't learn enough, won't succeed, or won't be independent? What would you tell them? And who wants to start with this one?
I would like to.
Thank you, Jeff.
So there was two things. One is if they're thinking about a Sudbury school or having somebody remain in a Sudbury school, so they're very different. You have to ask yourself first, why are you thinking about the choice in the first place, right? Why are you interested? And for somebody that has students in a Sudbury school, I would say that, how to put this, if you support them in a positive way, that is a tremendous success factor for them. If you say, like, I think Julia mentioned, maybe Elliot mentioned, you don't say, what did you do today? What did you learn today? But it was like, hey, how was your day? I think it's easy for us to say, but you have to trust the universe. Because what we're going to tell you is that your child, the students are going, if they are enjoying and thriving in the environment, with your support, they are going to be successful. I can say that. My colleagues may echo that. For somebody that's deciding to choose a Sudbury school, why? I was in first and second grade and I was like, this doesn't make sense. They want me to draw this thing, or I think I want to make this in the art room. My mother was a smoker. I wanted to make an ashtray. Like, you can't do that. That's a smoking thing. I'm like, wait a minute, that's my choice. What is it about going to a Sudbury school is motivating you? And if you make the decision, you can ask the questions, of what's going on with your kids. But if you support them, I think that is a greater success factor for them.
Thank you. Cassie?
Rebecca had a question that Jeff just started to answer, and maybe other people can answer too, is why did you and your parents choose Sudbury? Was it to get ahead, freedom, to be happy, or another reason?
I can answer that. I was homeschooled for like 2 years, first, second grade. And just because my parents didn't really see didn't really make sense to send me to a regular school. They just didn't really see it as a really good choice, I think. And and then I was selling books on the street because I was very ambitious about buying a horse when I was like 7. So I raised like 1,000 shekels, never, but it's a lot for a kid. And then the manager of whatever, I don't know, the one that's in charge of children going to school found me selling books when I was 7. Wasn't the best situation. Never mind. Then I started going like once a week to this, like the fun day at the normal school where I was living. Had a great time, had social friends, the classes were fine. I didn't have a hard experience at all. But it wasn't like, wow, okay, amazing, I'm living my life. But it was okay, I did it. And then we heard about this Sudbury school, went and saw it, and it was like 2 hours drive each way, and I was 9. We had a conversation with the staff members, and I fell in love just with what I can't even remember what they said. It was a long time ago, but I just remember the feeling of like, I want to do this. And everyone was looking at me and like, are you sure? Like, you're 9, 2 hours drive, maybe you should go to a different kind, also special, like not the regular school, but something closer. And I was like very determined. And I think that was the point of like, my parents wanted me to choose what is best for me, and they gave me the trust. And I didn't know how it would work out. I remember like when I was maybe 16, I went and volunteered in this ambulance service and needed to do an exam. I never sat in like a class and learned for an exam, and I passed with like 110 or whatever. Just like I got the bonus. And I remember my mom saying like, wow, she didn't know how it's gonna work out, but it's exactly what Jeff said. She trusted me as a person, not what I'm gonna achieve. I think that's the point. So they wanted me to go to a place where I feel that I'm choosing to go to and create in my own life. I think that's the point.
That's beautiful. So we're gonna go to the last question, and then I'll hand it to you, Cassie, for the last minutes. So what part of your Sudbury experience do you carry with you the most today? And I mean, is there a mindset, a habit, or a value that still shapes how you live or make decisions today as an adult, thanks to your Sudbury education? Who wants to jump into that one?
I can start on that one.
Yeah, Julia.
I think for me, it is a sense of agency in my own life. I've had like a non-traditional path through my early adulthood, and now I'm a small business owner. And I see a lot of my peers, even now in my early 40s, who don't seem to feel like they have a lot of control over their lives. And that is one of the things that I value most about my life, is that it is mine. And I think that is very tied to having that agency as a young person as well.
Awesome. Beautiful. Anyone else?
I kind of have two sides that I think of. One is just a confidence that I can figure things out and get things done and learn how to do whatever I decide I want to do. I'm going to figure out how to get there. And the other piece for me is, I think something I see in a lot of people in the world is feeling like they're intimidated to talk to certain people. As a kid, it's intimidated of adults or the teachers. In the corporate world, it's somebody's several levels more senior than you or more junior than you. Is this feeling of you're supposed to be kind of leveling and talking to the people where you are. And life at a Sudbury school taught me the exact opposite of that. And I felt it as a kid with my soccer coaches, and then with professors in college, and now with people that I work with and things like that too. And that has stuck with me. And every time I'm around, particularly students at the Circle School, and I'm an adult, I'm a bald, gray, bearded guy, and you can just look you in the eyes and have a conversation and just like talk to you like you're a person, which is great.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I have to echo that. I mean, critical thinking and problem solving, I think, because you're self-directed, so you're problem solving. You're thinking of things. I carry that through in everything I do, whether it's fixing something or solving a problem. And I think, that sort of, I think in the environment it's this mutual respect and the social aspect of interacting, like Connor said, with people your own age, younger than you, older than you, staff members. In my career, I've interviewed and worked with and see people that don't, or you go to a store and some people don't even want to look at in your eye, they just don't have certain skills. It's like, I feel if I had to draw a conclusion about that, my experience, it is that aspect of being comfortable with all kinds of people and and being able to interact with humans.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Cassie. So we have 5 minutes for the last questions that you have from the audience. Thanks for taking over.
Right. Yeah. So we wanted to be committed to be done at an hour and a half. So I'm going to try to see, probably one question here. And then we will have an after party afterwards. I have 2 pages of questions that we're not going to be getting to in this conversation, but we will try to figure out how other ways to answer them if it's sending something out. I know Daria is thinking about, she's planning to put an AMA together on our Instagram. Daniel, surprise. She decided to do it. So I'm telling everybody, you can, Daria, maybe you can make sure to put our Instagram information. Oh, there, she already did it. She's ahead of me. In the chat. So if you're not following us, please do. So we've got all of your questions, and you can also add any other questions to that AMA. But we've been talking a lot about success academically, career-wise, college, all of those things. One of the questions that I wanted to touch on was about emotional regulation and learning how to be a good human being. And this question comes from Anya, I believe, from Sligo, and also from other parents. And, we have a lot of parents here whose kids are currently in Sudbury schools. And I'm curious if any of you have, had run against the boundaries of the Sudbury school, had any kind of disciplinary things that you had to learn from during your career in your school, and what you learned from that. And maybe I'll start with Connor.
I don't think I ran into walls of disciplinary issues at school.
You're
Julia
a perfect
was a few years
child.
older than me and is agreeing with me. No, it's not to say I didn't leave messes or run and be too loud sometimes, as all kids do. I don't know, those weren't walls I ran into.
How about emotional regulation? Yeah, learning emotional regulation and that kind of thing. And how did that work?
If anybody has a better answer than I do, please feel free to jump in. I do not feel like this is an area I struggled with through my time at the Circle School.
I think I can answer that. Maybe from 2 sides. I'll try to be quick. I think Jeff said it in what does Sudbury give you? And I think the emotional side is so much bigger, and maybe it gets or takes less as if value in the like you said, professional world, like your academics. I think it's much more important, to be honest. Academic stuff, everyone can do. If you sit long enough and invest long enough, you'll get through it. But the emotional side, and I think especially in these advanced societies and everyone in their own country, but crazy stuff are happening. And you need to be very, to being able to regulate your mental state and your emotional part. And relationships, I think it's the most important part. So I think that the first, almost the only situation I had in school with with what you said, being testing the boundaries and stuff, was in a situation with a social situation with some friends. We were meeting up in one of the houses, some girls, and we didn't invite this other girl. And then there was a situation about it, and we need to come and talk about all of this and solve it in some way. I think that was happening in Sudbury all the time. You needed to figure out your social environment without hurting anyone else, also if they're not your close friends. And I think that dynamic is so critical in the world, anywhere, jobs, social lives, relationships, family. And I think that's something I carry from school always. Just gives you the ability to really get along in any kind of environment, a social environment you get to, because you learned it so intensively. Who spends 9 years talking and creating relationships with the same people? It's kind of incredible.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll do one more question. This comes from Kelly. So for specifically around feedback. So, a lot of us know in conventional schools how feedback works, an assessment. What does that look like in a Sudbury school? How do you receive feedback about your progress? How do you know if you're doing well or not? Maybe Julia, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if I have a good answer because I don't know that there is like a universal answer for that. I think I liked taking tests and doing academic work, and so just, you know, I mean, so I guess I should say I don't know that this is true for every school, but the Circle School did not, and I think still does not have like an institutional way of evaluating students. And so there isn't a report card or there's no formal structure for giving students feedback in that way. So you get feedback from your peers when you're doing things that they don't like or that they do like. If you want academic feedback, you can figure out how to make that happen. If you want to know whether or not you're getting better as a cook, you might be making muffins every week and selling them. And the more you sell, that's good feedback on how you're doing. So I think that, you know, kids can get feedback in a lot of the same ways that adults can get feedback in their larger lives, but not one path to that.
All right. Well, that's kind of our time, Daniel, unless we're wanting to go over, but I can pass it back to you to kind of send us off. Tell us what to do next.
Yeah, thank you. So just a couple of minutes to share a few thoughts with everybody. So to each of the graduates, thank you. Your stories are incredibly moving and deeply reassuring. So you have shown us what's possible when young people are trusted to take ownership of their own lives. And to everyone here, thanks for listening with an open mind and heart. So if this webinar sparked something in you, curiosity, relief, maybe even hope, I invite you to keep exploring. If you're a parent, visit a Sudbury school near you, ask questions, and watch how the kids move and talk. If you're an educator, keep digging into the research. Read Free at Last and Free to Learn. Talk to others in this movement. If you're new to all of this, know that you're not alone. Many of us came to this model because we wanted something more human, more joyful, and more aligned with what we know about how children thrive. We believe that education can be both joyful and effective, that kids don't need to suffer through school to become successful adults, that when we trust them, support them, and step back just enough, they surprise us with who they become. If you would like to learn more, you can visit sudburyinternational.org or reach out to any of the participating schools. And finally, if this conversation moved you, please help us spread the word. Share this recording. Talk to others. This movement grows one real story at a time. To get this recording, sign up for the Sudbury International newsletter in our website. And if you want to stay for the after party right now, please stay. We will have all the mics and cameras open and just have an informal conversation. So thanks again for being with us, and we hope to see you again very soon. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.